Now, The Lost Daughter, I kind of already mentioned this at the top of the show, saying how it hit limited release earlier this month, and I managed to catch a screener of it, but it's still pretty fresh in my mind. But it's now streaming on Netflix, so great time to talk about it, and more people can check it out. This is a new film written and directed for the first time by Maggie Gyllenhaal, her feature debut, and it's based on the novel by Elena Ferrante, who I actually have the novel over on my desk there. And it's like a psychological drama about motherhood, kind of like an uncomfortable meditation on really like what the types of mothers who are just like, I don't want to be a mother, but I am one. It's that kind of story. It stars Olivia Colman, Dakota Johnson, Jessie Buckley. We should say Olivia Colman is really the main character here, and we follow her while she's on a vacation in Greece, and she kind of like sees herself, like her younger self, through this other person there who's with their daughter, who is just like having a really rough time. And she's, of course, played by Dakota Johnson. And we see flashbacks of Olivia Colman's own life and how she handled, the perils of motherhood, played by Jessie Buckley. We also have Paul Mescal in this movie, who we recognize from Normal People, which is a very important series to me in general. Also, Peter Sarsgaard is in this, and the wonderful Ed Harris, who shows up in this and has a pretty sizable role. Now, Olivia Colman also serves as an executive producer. This is definitely an awards favorite in some circles. It premiered, I think, at Venice. And I think it's one of Netflix's big plays for a couple of nominations, at least in the acting and possibly adapted screenplay. And we should, of course, say the screenplay, I did say it was written and directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal. She also did the screenplay. And I think, first off the bat, I got to say, Maggie Gyllenhaal, wow. Fantastic debut from her. Whether or not people like the film, and I don't think everybody's loving this movie, I think that this is a really strong start for her directing career and her screenplay career. I don't think she's getting enough credit for her screenwriting bona fides, although she did win an award already for best screenplay through Venice, if I'm not mistaken. So that said, Will Ashton, Lost Daughter, what do you think of this movie? You like it?
Good film. I'm going to say that off the top. And I agree that because I think this movie, it's not particularly flashy in terms of its visuals. I think it's very precise, like the way that like the movie comes together, especially as an adaptation. I think it's easy for folks, especially because it's on Netflix, which I think is probably, it's good in terms of getting it eyeballs, but I don't think this is probably the right way to distribute the film. This is like the type of film you need to watch, I feel like, at an art house with like 5 other people spread out on like a Tuesday or like a Sunday afternoon or something like that, Sunday matinee. Like we can really like kind of fully devote your attention to it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
it feels like a weird movie.
I can picture myself in that theater eating it's that day when the popcorn is just right. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm there.
Right. It just reminds me of the type of movies I would see at my college art house theater, like a Saturday at like 2:45, and like nobody's talking to each other. There are like 4 other people in the theater, and then you go to the bathroom afterwards, and like some guy next to you in the urinal is like, "Pretty good movie, right?" And it's like, I guess.
We don't talk in here.
Yeah. Not I guess because I didn't like the movie, more just like I don't know who this man is. Why are you talking to me? I've had that experience a few times, if you can infer. But
last time I had that experience, I think, was for the Hateful Eight during the intermission.
Really?
Yeah.
What did they say?
They were just like, "Wow, what's going to happen next?" And I'm like,
"Oh, really?
We don't talk in here."
Okay, yeah, that's word of advice, because I know we have younger listeners. Don't spark up movie conversations in the bathroom with strangers.
Not a good idea.
Your intentions may not be bad, but it's not the time nor place. But yeah, no, I think like you said before, like I think there is something very specific about the way she films this movie. It's not, like I said, particularly showy film, but like even like though it's very picturesque, there is something like this underlying current of terror that doesn't feel overstated, but it's like constantly fueling the film throughout. And I think a lot of that comes from really smart editing choices, but I also think it's just her as a filmmaker, one that's pretty adept, like you said, coming into this early on. It just feels like she knows exactly what she wants to say with this text. She's not making like very like flashy choices, but all those choices feel very in sync with what she's saying, and it's a really impressive debut.
Yeah, I think what's key to this debut, it's not just the technicals. Obviously, the technicals are impressive in their own right. I think what impresses me the most is that she's not flinching with this subject matter, which I think is what makes or break this novel making it as an adaptation, because this sparks really uncomfortable dialogue about a type of person who sees the downfall of motherhood and kind of just wants to shun it. And it kind of humanizes and sympathizes a point of view that movies just don't usually talk about or don't usually get into, especially not at this scale. Like, we get something, maybe like a French film here or there will have something like a character like this as the protagonist. But yeah, I mean, Olivia Colman in this, she's not like likable. Like, she's mean. She's a bit of a brat. And at the same time, I love her.
She's complex.
She's complex.
Yeah.
Like, she's rude to people, but she kind of like catches herself and then tries to adjust. And she has a hard time being fake. You know, she has a hard time with like niceties, and she does like terrible things for no good reason. And like, I think the fascination behind this movie is getting to know her and understanding her, or trying to. And I think when we get to the end of the movie, that is really what makes this movie kind of like stick out to me, is how it's able to bring a character like her to life in kind of a profound way, like a way that I wasn't expecting. And yeah, I think in terms of like characterization, this is the kind of movie that like has my number.
Yeah, I mean, I heard that complaint going into it that her character is unlikable. And for one, I think anyone who is just dismissing a movie because the character is unlikable is, I think they're kind of showing their ass a little bit, because like, how many movies have we gotten with unlikable male characters that get praised, rightly or wrongly? Right. And I feel like there's this kind of this hypocrisy where it's just like, oh, because we get an unlikable female character. Not saying that's the case for everyone that dislikes a movie, but I think it is for some. So felt like it was worth saying. But at the same time, I guess because I was so often told that her character is unlikable, that I guess I was expecting her character to be more unlikable. And I felt like the Jessie Buckley character is more unlikable than the Olivia Colman one. Like, I feel like we said, she's kind of just more like standoffish, and like she does kind of some impulsively selfish things, but it's not like she's like,
I don't know though. She's doing like an extended deception.
Oh,
for a child, that is right, like,
that's a bit, yeah.
That is like, it's really hard to sort of be like, I like this guy. You know what I'm saying?
No,
like,
no, but I get what you mean. Well, that, I mean, yeah, as we find out about that going, but I mean, like early on, where it's just like,
yeah, sure, early
these strangers are coming up. It's like, hey, can you like move? It's like, I don't know you. Like, why would I want to move?
I was just like, you go. Like,
right,
yeah,
exactly, yeah, like. That's what I'm talking about, more like stuff like that. But yeah, I think Olivia Colman is, as expected, really good in this movie. And I think what I really like about Maggie Gyllenhaal's direction is that obviously she knows as an actress herself how to really highlight her performance. Like, Olivia Colman is an actress who can be brought in theatrical in certain roles, but I think there's a chilliness here that I think is kind of hard to communicate. If you have a director that doesn't showcase that well, this performance can seem too understated. And I think she's good about allowing Olivia Colman to feel very reserved and in the I'm not exactly sure what word I was looking for, but like kind of reserved and chilly, but like you can understand her impulsively, even if you don't understand exactly what's going on in her mind. You can kind of sympathize with where she's standing and understand her as a character. And I think that's something that, as we've been mentioning already, for a first time filmmaker to communicate that visually really well is something that I find really impressive.
I think the word that I was gravitating toward for her character was, there's something unsettling about this person. And for most of the movie, it's hard to pinpoint why am I so unsettled by this? And it's a movie that examines that reaction. It's about that. And it's sort of being like, we put all of these expectations and all of these preconceptions of like what a mother is into people. Like, people tell us, like, I have 2 kids, and you immediately make assumptions about them. And I think this is a movie sort of like poking at like human beings are so much more complex than the labels and the sort of archetypes that we create for people. I think that's why it's such a killer debut for me, because for a first-time filmmaker, and like you said, an actor, to really get to the root of something like that in a way that, by all intents that I can tell, is pretty true to the novel. I haven't read the whole thing, but certainly is like capturing the spirit of that novel and like what it's trying to investigate. Yeah, I think that this movie really lands. Now, is it a movie that I think is going to like rattle your bones and, invigorate, your thirst for cinema? Not necessarily. I think that it's a really fun thinking movie that maybe fun isn't the right word, but I think it's one that I went through really interested the entire time. And I certainly got a few things out of it. Not to say that it's for sure the most entertaining and amusing film you can watch, but not that it's trying to be.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. Look, like I mean, I know Power of the Dog is doing well in there, so I don't want to assume that like Netflix users have like kind of restless fingers, but I do feel like this is the type of movie that probably is best benefited by like wrestling with it in the theater if you could. Like, you know, certainly like if you were to kind of like sit with it and like kind of stew with it a little bit more. I worry with something like Netflix where, you know, you have the remote next to you and you're kind of dealing with a character who's a bit inscrutable and, you know, not always someone you can sympathize or relate to. You can, you know, kind of flip the channel and put on Cobra Kai. And you know that I think
hey, I just watched fourth season of Cobra Kai and it rules. So
I'm not dismissing Cobra Kai. I'm just saying that like I think that temptation can come about a little bit easier on Netflix. So I mean, I'm glad they distributed. I'm glad we're getting movies like this, but I also worry with a studio like or a distributor like Netflix if this is the type of movie that best suits their service. But at the same time, like I said, I'd much rather they have it and release it than the other way around. But yeah.
I do want to mention that I said that it's not that amusing. It has amusing moments, though.
Oh, it's pretty darkly funny in certain moments.
Yes, very darkly funny.
Dryly funny, yeah.
Ed Harris dances in this movie. Olivia Colman dances in this movie. And I really dug this Jessie Buckley performance. It's really good. I think what's good about it to me the most is that she and Olivia Colman look nothing alike. But for some reason, I bought that they're the same person. Like, no, I don't know how they did that. Like,
because because when I heard about the movie, I didn't know much about the plot. I was under the assumption that Jessie Buckley was playing her daughter. So when I saw she was going to be her in the flashback scenes, I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of a you know, like I said, physically, I don't quite see the two. I mean, obviously, Jessie Buckley, I think, is taller than Olivia Colman, a few other differences. But yeah, I think I agree with you that like it was a performance. I was like, I kind of had to sit with it as well. But I think ultimately, and it's, you know, it's kind of hard to follow Olivia Colman, to be fair. But I think Jessie Buckley is, you know, obviously quite a standout actress. She continues to impress in a lot of things, including last year's You Were Never Really Here. But
I'm thinking
I'm thinking of anything. Sorry. But yeah, I think she's really doing some outstanding stuff, and certainly this is no exception.
Yeah, Jessie Buckley, one of our finest young actors today. I think that Dakota Johnson is quite good in this as well. Another one of our wonderful, you know, like new generation on the block kind of actor, but kind of like mixing it up with some older proven actors, as we see in this with Ed Harris and Olivia Colman and more. Now, I got a question for you, Will. It's a tough question. You know, it's one that maybe is a little bit more open-ended than I'm about to make it sound, but who is the lost daughter? Is it Olivia Colman? Is it all of us?
Sure.
Is it Maggie Gyllenhaal?
Yeah, I mean, without giving too much away about the plot, I do kind of like that there is that that sort of ripple effect to it. Like we're seeing like kind of like three different generations of motherhood. One, you know, like who obviously is like follow like Olivia Colman's character, you know, has a lot of regrets about how she handled her motherhood. We have Dakota Johnson, you know, just a newfound mother and having some of the feelings that a lot of people or a lot of mothers have, but maybe don't feel comfortable vocalizing. And then we have another woman, I can't think of the actress's name, but like she is, you know, coming into motherhood a little bit late, but, you know, she kind of has her opinions already about what motherhood should be and doesn't quite feel comfortable with Olivia Colman's general disposition. It's a movie. I mean, it feels weird that we're like two guys kind of talking about this movie because it's such a woman-centric film, and I imagine there's a lot of great reviews that discuss these things a little bit more in depth and a little bit more thoughtfully. But yeah, I think this is the type of movie that I really like kind of chewing with and sitting with, and I don't know if it's quite going to hit my like best of the year list, but it's a type of movie I'm really thankful that we're getting still.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that if there was one studio note I would put in, it's like call The Lost Daughters, right? But no, in a more serious note, one of my favorite lines from this movie, and kind of what you're talking about, of like, yeah, you know, we're two guys. We can't relate directly to this, but I do think it is pretty telling that we can get so much out of it just as like two outsiders, right, to this kind of story. And, you know, I think there are a lot of guys who will watch this movie and might be confused. They won't know what to make of it. And that comes down to a line in this movie. I think it was like somebody says, "I'm an unnatural mother." And I think where the guys kind of fit into this story is that like, a lot of those expectations, a lot of those like demands that are made of mothers can be rooted from not just other women, which this movie talks about, but also other men. Or men in general, who are just sort of like, you're supposed to do this because you're the mother. You have this responsibility and this and this and this. And what I like about this movie is that it's daring. It's brave enough to say like, there is a person who feels this way and, shouldn't be judged for it. And even if you do judge her, I just think this is a movie that's pretty good about, dissecting that judgment in a thoughtful way that hopefully can bring some catharsis to people watching and being like, I've always felt like that. I could see people watching this. I've met people who are just sort of like, I could never see myself having kids. Like, it isn't just like a momentary thing. It's just something I'm, starkly opposed to. And I like the idea of them being able to watch a movie like this and being like, you know what, I'm not alone. Like, and I maybe they always knew they weren't alone, but it's nice when a movie sort of validates that feeling that usually is being called unnatural. And so like, if a movie can do that, particularly one on Netflix, I think that's really great. I think that's really a really good thing that can help people process some really tough stuff. So, not to say that, everybody who's going to get something out of it is going to be that kind of person, but I do think that it's certainly instructive in a lot of ways, having compassion and empathy for people who see the world differently and, have the right to do so.
Yeah, I mean, I generally find it really impressive that this is a American film because it does, like I think you mentioned earlier, have a sort of European feel to it, not only in terms of the location that it's filmed in, but just the general aesthetics and the way that it approaches these kind of inscrutable subject matters. And,
well, the author is Italian of the subject matter. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. I just meant from the film production standpoint.
Sure.
Is she involved with the film? I don't know. Actually.
I don't think so. She's not a producer.
Okay. Well, obviously, I know, like you said, Maggie Gyllenhaal adapted the screenplay, but I didn't know she, like you said, produced the film.
Right.
But yeah, we also, just like obviously like in America, we're kind of in this like, and not to get like too into it, but we're kind of in this weird time where like I think people have certain expectations for women and what women's roles in societies should be in terms of like their anatomy and gender and their like motherhood and stuff like that. And I think having a film like this is so refreshing because, like you said, it asks a lot of tough, difficult questions and it gives you a lot to chew on, but it doesn't give any particularly easy answers about it either. And yeah, it's a really impressive film in that regard.
We finally agree on a film this week. I mean, I guess we kind of agreed on Sing too, I guess.
Sure.
Sort of. I don't know. We agreed more than we didn't. We'll say that.
We went from Sing 2 to singing the praises of
there you go.
Lost
yeah, we had some
Daughter.
praises to sing for this one. I want to say, I don't think Paul Mescal is, particularly utilized well here. Like, I think he's good in the movie as Will. It's kind of like,
Will.
Roundabout kind of guy. He's perfectly nice in this, but if people aren't familiar, he is killer in the show Normal People. It's a limited series that was on Hulu last year.
Oh, that's where he's from.
Yes, and he is wonderful in that show. I was excited to see him in this, but I just didn't get like that full Paul Mescal experience. But certainly good in this movie.
I was, because they introduced him fairly early on, and you're like, I wonder if he's going to play a bigger role later in the film. And not really.
Yeah.
But
he's more of a plot device than anything else.
Since we're talking about the men in the movie, I will say Ed Harris. So wonderful to see him again. He's fantastic in this. And Maggie Gyllenhaal's husband, Pierce Sarsgaard, is in the film. And
he shows up kind of like midway through the movie, and I was kind of like, is this just going to be a cameo because of the relation? But no, he gets a few interesting scenes.
And I like that. Like I don't know. I mean, I feel like Hollywood never really knew what to do with Pierce Sarsgaard. I feel bad for the guy. I mean, he's probably very rich. Like they always kind of got cast into these like sort of villainous roles, but I feel like there's always sort of a sensuality to him that's like kind of hard to put your finger on. Like there's a couple movies that deal with it, like Kingsley. I remember talking.
Boys Don't Cry.
Boys Don't Cry. That's a good example, I guess. I haven't seen Boys Don't Cry, so I don't want to speak out of turn with that.
Oh, you should. It's quite good. One of my favorite movie with him, though, where he's not. Of course, he's not like really a villain in a traditional way. Is probably an Education. Which that's a good in Education, good example. I think that like in that movie it's just like the depth of his acting is just so it's endless in that kind of movie. But then you get him in something like Magnificent Seven, where you're just like, okay.
But I mean, as we were, I guess, sort of alluding to, like the female lens, I guess, in this movie, like the way that she's able to look at Pierce Sarsgaard in a way that's like, very sexual in a way that I don't think we typically get in American films like this. It's refreshing to see. you don't really get that perspective, I guess, a lot in films like this. Yeah.
Agreed. Well, it's now playing on Netflix, and I think it's still playing in some theaters. So it sounds like we both recommend The Lost Daughter. Rotten Tomatoes game. Okay, well, Ashton, 163 reviews have been counted. One of them's mine, and so that gives you at least a little bit of a clue, right?
Were you positive on the film?
I was positive on. Yeah, I was quite positive on the film. It's in.
I just want to make sure. I didn't know if your opinion changed, if you were more favorable with time.
You think I'm just like a fair weather? I'm just like going back and forth because you looked at my yearly rankings and you were just
I looked at your yearly ranking and you're like all over the place now. I don't know what to think of John Negroni, Film the Critic.
Right.
Now.
I've been updating it all year. It's not like, but anyway, 163 reviews have been counted for The Lost Daughter. What do you think the critic score is right now on Rotten Tomatoes?
89%.
96%.
Wow. Okay. Good for Lost Daughter. Yeah.
I think it perked up a little bit too, because I think it was a little bit lower and then it kind of went up. I think it, because like when I was watching it at that point, I didn't really know if it was going to be like a darling for critics. It seemed like it could go either way. I was kind of hearing from some people who had seen it from Venice being like, it's okay. And then some people being like, it's good. But yeah, some of the effusive praise is starting to happen now, I think. I
feel like it's more of a critic circle favorite than a award season favorite.
Very
but
likely.
I can certainly see why the Netflix put in their like Oscar contender roundup.
Yeah, it is amazing how The Favorite just sort of rocketed Olivia Colman to this level. Like that was a movie people were not expecting her to win Best Actress for, and since then I think that her career is just like
The Father,
this and The Father. Yeah, I mean. She is certainly now like one of our top tier, actors working right now. What about the audience score? We have 250 plus ratings. Not a lot of ratings for a Netflix movie, but what do you think? What do you think audiences are saying about this one? What do you think?
I'm gonna say 72%.
Oh man, 43%.
Oof.
43. And there was
I knew there were going to be more.
There was a tweet thing, a controversy yesterday, where there were some people, a debacle, a bit of a discourse, where there were a couple of people who are horrible, like if film Twitter's worst, who are just sort of like, this is the disconnect between critics and fans, and people were just like, please stop talking. Like that was kind of the gist. They were like, I haven't seen a divide this steep. Critics are so out of touch. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I hate this.
Oh, those folks. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I thought you were talking like critics being like, see, like, why can't audiences appreciate this movie?
No, other direction.
You're saying it's backwards. Like, critics should be like more critical of this film because the audiences are quote unquote saying it how it is.
Yeah, 250 plus ratings, like almost the same amount of critics, and they're not even verified ratings. So yeah.
Well, I mean, do you think it's because it centers around as we mentioned, unlikable female?
Because it's a tough watch.
Character?
It's not a traditionally like that's the thing that bugs me when people are like, "There's a divide between critics and fans." Usually, when that's the case, it's because it's a tougher film. It's a more challenging film, and that's kind of to be expected. It's like people are like, "Well, yeah, but there's no divide like between like Spider-Man: No Way Home." It's like, yeah, because that's not as challenging a film. Like it's pretty like easy to evaluate the quality of that one.
There's a reason I think this movie didn't get dropped on Christmas Eve the same way Don't Look Up does. And it's funny to think that like Don't Look Up is considered more accessible to a wider audience than The Lost Daughter, but at
because
the same time,
it makes people feel good about themselves of like, I have the right opinion.
About the world ending?
No, I think like people watch the movie and get self-righteous.
Oh,
and,
of course,
like,
yeah. Morally superior.
Morally superior. There's like a bit of like I can bring on this righteous indignation because I see these people who don't like the movie, and that makes me want to target them and just be like, you don't like this movie, you don't like this movie's message. And it's just like, my gosh, are we in preschool? Like, okay.
All right.
This is why our average rating on Cinemaholics is going down.
Yeah.
I'm going a little bit too hard. Sorry.
Sure.
That's The Lost Daughter. We don't have a cinema score, if you can believe it, but we do have a Letterboxd average, and we've been doing this a little bit more recently. We didn't do it for Tragedy of Macbeth and Sing 2, but let's do it for this one. What do you think the average Letterboxd rating is? Letterboxd, of course, is a 5-point system.
3.4.
3.6, not bad. Pretty close, only 0.2 off. 3.6 out of 5. So yeah, most people are pretty much giving it like 3.5 stars. I think that's pretty in line. I think I'm around like a 3.5 star if I had to do it, which is quite good. Very good film.